Dáil Éireann has passed on the 14th day of December 2017 the Irish Sign Language Bill 2016, changed from recognition of Irish Sign Language for the Deaf Community Bill 2016, considered by virtue of Article 20(2) of the Constitution, as a bill initiated in Dáil Éireann to which the agreement of Seanad is desired. Paul, where's Mark? Sign Language Bill 2016, Seanad, a change from recognition of Irish Sign Language for the Deaf Community Bill 2016, Seanad Bill amended by the Dáil, report and final stages. This is a Seanad Bill which has been amended by the Dáil in accordance with Standing Order 148. It is deemed to have passed its first, second and third stages in the Seanad and is placed on the order paper for report stage. On the question that the bill be received for final consideration, the Minister may explain the purpose of the amendments made by the Dáil, and this is looked upon as the report of the Dáil amendments to the Seanad. For the convenience of senators, I have arranged for the printing and circulation to them of those amendments. The Minister will deal separately with the subject matter of each related group of amendments. I have also circulated the proposed grouping in the House. A senator may contribute once on each grouping. I want to remind the senators that only matter that may be discussed are the amendments made by the Dáil. The question proposed that the bill be received for final consideration. No, I call the Minister now. Yeah, I call on the Minister now to. Yeah.
First of all, Carlick, I want to thank you for the opportunity of speaking to the Seanad. And just before I go into the details of the legislation, I want to wish you all a very happy Christmas and all the best for 2018. I want to thank you for your support and cooperation over the last 2 terms of the Dáil. In relation to this particular issue, can I say at the outset that I am delighted to be here again and to report that the bill has passed in the Dáil and is now ready for the President's signature. I want to commend Senator Mark Daly and I want to commend members of the deaf community for all of your work. But I also want to commend you right across every single party in the Seanad, all the senators that were very, very supportive of the deaf community on this issue over the last 6 to 7 months. I want to thank and commend you for your support, and again, it's an important statement coming from the Seanad, but it's also an important statement coming from yourselves, just pointing out the relevance of this House in Irish political life. And I was so glad in the last campaign, when some elements were trying to close down the Seanad, that I supported that campaign to retain the Seanad. And this to me is another example of the effectiveness of our Seanad. So again, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for that. And members of the deaf community will appreciate that as well. And last night in the Dáil was a very historic night and a very enjoyable night for the deaf community and their families. But the basic reason why we're here this morning is it was great to see the consensus that we were all able to achieve. My task today, though, is to report back on the amendments that were made to the bill in the Dáil. And these amendments are as follows. Amendment number 1, the reinsertion of a concise definition of Irish Sign Language into the bill. The Attorney General's Office has advised that this would be a useful inclusion in the bill. Amendments number 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 and 8. They're updating the reference to the Companies Act that making typographical changes elsewhere in sections 1, 2 and section 5. Amendments number 6 and 11. They're moving a regulation-making power, adding new public bodies to section 2 definitions to a substantive section of this bill, section 6. Again, the advice from the AG's office was that this is the proper approach to the creation of a regulation-making power rather than having it in definitions in the definitions section. Amendment number 9 tightens up the wording of section 6, subsection 1 to ensure that all services provided by a public body are covered by the bill. Amendment number 10 is a technical recasting of Section 6, subsection 3, regulations in relation to the notice to be given by a user of Irish Sign Language seeking to avail of free interpretation services and auxiliary matters. Amendment number 12. I accepted the argument made during the debate here that sign language users suffer extreme isolation. And I think this is important that we recognise that, and I think number 12 accepts this very strong and sincere argument. Provision of support so they can visit their GP or engage in social and cultural activities would be a humane and worthwhile initiative to combat this isolation and improve the well-being and mental health. This is what amendment number 12 brings into the bill, and I think this is a very important amendment. I secured the agreement of the Minister for Employment Affairs and Social Protection for the provision in principle of funding to the Irish Sign Language Services SLIS in this regard. And it's important as well that we state that rights and liberties without backup and resources are meaningless, and it's important that we have that. And this section here deals strongly with this. So the intention of 2018 is to develop guidelines as envisaged in Amendment number 12. SLIS is working with its founder, the Citizen Information Board, will be tasked with scoping out how a model for such a scheme would operate and preparing draft guidelines for consideration and approval by the Minister for Employment and Social Protection. The intention, subject to progress of this work, is to aim to trial an approach towards the end of 2018, and to this sum, a sum of up to 150,000 may be made available from within existing resources to meet any pilot project costs incurred towards the end of 2018. Following the learning from the pilot, more detailed proposals, revised guidelines will be developed, which will inform future annual funding requirements, subject to the consent of the Minister for Public Expenditure and reform in the normal way. Amendment number 13. This is an internal reorganisation of Section 10 review of the Act, essentially renumbering the various clauses that follow subsection 1. And finally, can I say, last night in the Dáil, an amendment made to the title in relation to amendment number 17. There was an amendment discussed there on that issue. There was a bit of confusion during the debate in the middle of all the excitement, and the record of the Dáil shows that the amendment was accepted. Now, my adviser has been in contact, Jerry McGuire, has been in contact with Senator Mark Daly on this particular issue. So I just inform you in relation to this situation. Can I finally say, Carl, that it's a very important day for the deaf community. It's a recognition of Irish Sign Language. It's a very historic day, and as I said earlier on in my comments, I want to thank all the senators for your fantastic support, for your detailed discussion over the last number of months, and once again I want to thank Senator Mark Daly for doing a lot of work on this. I'm working very closely with my own team, Declan, Jennifer and Jerry Maguire, because there were some difficult moments, we all accept that, but it shows us that when everybody united and got together, we can bring in a piece of legislation, the full recognition of Irish Sign Language Bill, and again I want to thank you all for your support.
Senator Daly, what we're currently discussing are the amendments made by the Dáil, and if people want to make general comments afterwards, they can do so when the thing is passed. So, yeah.
Point of order. Can I ask, are we discussing all these amendments together?
Group 1. Group 1 first.
Right, I see.
All except number 8, actually.
It's numbers 1,
all except number 8. That's yeah. So first I call Martin, then Senator Boyan.
I might suggest to colleagues, because in fairness to Orla Murray, she did allow this bill to come in earlier than the public alcohol bill, and we've agreed all the amendments. Yeah, so we don't have to debate the amendments. So if you would be happy to, not to discuss the amendments, and thanks, Minister, for being here. And I suppose we could do the wrap-up parts and the thanks, if that's all right with you, Leader. We can pass all the amendments,
okay,
if that's agreement of the House.
Okay.
Just with the agreement of the Leader.
Well, if people can comment, but if there's agreement, we'll try and Senator Boyan was next.
Well, I can.
Brief. I just want.
Can I just? Well, I just make my comments.
Oh, I thought you were.
Do you want me to wrap up at the end? Here,
you can wrap up in the end, yeah.
Yeah, all right, I'll wrap up.
Yeah, it's your bill. You're
yeah, no, I'll wrap up at the end.
Just could I ask you, in relation to amendment number 8, is it being discussed?
Yes. No, it's the second group. So, yeah. No, hold on a second. No, you were very anxious for... Yeah. We're discussing Group 1, which is every amendment made by the Dáil, excluding number 8. So number 8 will be next. So... Yes, you can speak, yes. Go ahead. Do you want to speak on the amendments of Group 1? No, I don't want general discussion of the bill. Anyone who wants to speak when the bill is passed, I'll allow everyone in that wants to speak. Do you want to speak on this first grouping, Senator? Yeah.
Well, just to make a very brief comment, these are all technical amendments, I think. They've been accepted, so there's no discussion at all. But I would just like to make one point, and that is that I was very pleased indeed to see that there was a signer in the Dáil last night. And I think that was very important, but here again is another way in which Seanad led the way. We had a signer during all the discussions on the bill. Éireann found it impossible to do so, but I'm very glad that they saw the wisdom of the ways of Seanad.
Minister, did you cover the amendment in Group 2? Amendment 8 in Group 2, is that Amendment 8?
Yeah.
I beg your pardon. If we're discussing all these amendments, could I just make one comment on one of the amendments, which is amendment number 12. I welcome that, but I would signal that it seems to be a work in progress, that it's not actually completed. There's a scoping exercise. It won't be available until next year, and then there will be a pilot project. So it's not something that is actually completed or accomplished in this bill. It is a work in progress, and I think we need to kind of monitor that.
Yeah, I garner know that the Minister has rolled the two groups in together, so those who want to make a comment on Group 8 or Amendment 8, Senator McDowell, you wish to...
The Seanad got it right in respect of Amendment number 8. The phrase is in loco parentis. It's a Latin phrase, and it was in italics. And the draftsman has persuaded the other House to write in English and loco parentis in Latin. And I'm just noting that fact for the draftsman's benefit. We got it right, and he is now making us get it wrong. So, but on the day that's in it, I won't put the matter any further.
So, could I support Senator McDowell? The entire phrase in Latin is in loco parentis. I mean, the in is not an English in; it is a Latin in.
That's the point.
Yeah. Noted. Is a report stage agreed?
Agreed.
That the bill do now pass. Sorry, next stage. Since it's your bill, so you move that.
Yeah, I'd move this stage, and I just want to.
Yeah.
I want.
You know what? I'll let you back in again when the bill passes, unless there's something specific to say. Is it agreed to next stage now? Agreed. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, thanks, and I'd like to thank colleagues for their cooperation and assistance, and to the leader.
We have a final thing to say. The bill has passed. Will I do that before I let you in, Senator?
Yes.
Okay. I'll just that the bill do now pass. Is that agreed? Agreed. Aroig Latinish.
Karamina Mahagat Kahili and Ara, and I'd like to dedicate this bill to the memory of Daniel and William McCarthy, both in their 70s, who died in Bluebell in Dublin. They were deaf brothers. They lived together for 25 years, but they died in social isolation. Their bodies were not found for a number of days, and they were buried in their native Dingle in County Kerry. And to all those who suffered social isolation and similar lack of understanding of the deaf community and their culture. Minister, I'd like to thank you for being here today. This is an issue of civil rights for the deaf community. It gives them civil rights and access to the state services. It ends that extreme marginalisation that was spoken about yesterday in the Dáil chamber. But without you, this bill would not be passing. You have championed this bill, and you have done so from the start, although we did have a number of disagreements along the way, as is the way with politics. This has been a deaf-led campaign for over 3 decades. I'd like to thank the Irish Deaf Society and Eddie Redmond and John Bosco Comina, and to Leanna Quigley, and to all those who have been advocates for sign language recognition for the deaf community. The Kerry Deaf Resource Centre, Willie White, who was up here yesterday and has been here for a number of meetings with the department, to the Deaf Institute, the Irish Deaf Institute, Liam Breen from Kerry, and the Cork Deaf Association, Jerry O'Grady, Graham O'Shea, Andrew Geary and his son Callum, who explained to us, I suppose, from the point of view of he having a twin brother who is hearing, and yet Callum, because he is deaf, was falling further and further behind because he simply didn't have access to an interpreter. To my own party leader, Micheál Martin, who met with the Deaf Association in Cork a number of months ago in relation to the passing of this bill, and to my colleagues Jim O'Callaghan and Jack Chambers, who were on the Justice Committee, and to the chairman of the Justice Committee, Caoimhín O'Quailán, who ensured that this bill went through pre-legislative scrutiny early on, and their report, which highlighted the extreme marginalisation of the deaf community, was key to making sure that this bill progressed through all stages in this House. To our Dáil spokesperson yesterday in the Dáil Chamber on disabilities, Margaret Murphy O'Mahony and Fiona O'Loughlin, and to James Brown, who spoke in it, and to all the people from all parties who spoke in it and spoke in favour of this bill, and to all my Senate colleagues who attended meetings, one of which Victor and Lynn were at, which went for 7 hours, and that was only one of them, which followed the very unusual committee stage that we had here, but there was a more unusual committee stage which we had subsequently in the department, where we met with them and we went through the bill line by line. Now, going through committee stage line by line is difficult here, but doing it with members of the deaf community is a challenge to behold. But in the spirit of new politics, Leader, I'd like to acknowledge the work of Fine Gael and Joe McHugh and Alice Carney in the Whip's office on the Dáil side to ensure that this bill got through into the Dáil work schedule before the summer recess, or before the Christmas recess, and to Orla Murray, who I know is watching anxiously in her room and hoping that we get through this as quickly as possible so that the rest of the business could be done. But this is an important day for the deaf community. This was done, and with huge cooperation and collaboration by a huge amount of people on all sides. I suppose the biggest congratulations, I think, Minister, goes to you and to your staff, to Declan over there, who is your quiet advisor, trying to advise you with pieces of paper and whispers in the ear, and to Jerry Maguire, who, like yourself, is a champion of the underdog. And finally, I'm not sure, is Grace here? No, she's not, because she's working. Grace Coyle in my office, who brought relentless drive and determination, as Declan and Jerry would know. No stone was left unturned, no roadblock was allowed in the way, no mountain would stand. Thank you.
Into Conway.
And I'd like to share the sentiments and the expressions of thanks that Senator Daly just outlined. I think that this is a historic day. It is a civil rights issue. It's an issue that I certainly in the last Senate highlighted through a private member's motion. And, to be fair to Senator Mark Daly, he stuck at it. He kept on highlighting the issue. He brought the legislation through, and I'd like to commend everybody for all their work on this very, very important piece of legislation. I'd like to salute Minister Finney McGrath. I think the fact that we have a senior Cabinet Minister now with specific responsibility for disabilities is a good thing, and I think that the passing of this bill through the House is reflective of this government's policy and attitude towards people with disabilities. This government realises the people with disabilities have rights, and we're going to have hopefully the UN Convention and the rights of people with disabilities ratified and enacted, if you like, over the coming weeks. I think all of those very important steps are very important incremental steps in the right direction. I'd like to commend also the leader, Seanad, and his staff for the work they have done to facilitate this piece of legislation. But more than anyone else, no more than Senator Daly, I want to commend and salute the thousands of deaf people in this country whose lives will be enriched and enhanced as a result of this piece of legislation.
Thank you. Just to remind us, there's 12 people indicating to speak. I'm not going to stop anyone, but just next is Senator Boyle.
thank the Minister and, for his work and his assistants and officials, and how we've come a long, long way from that time when we met for those many hours in your department during the summer. And I think you were expecting 3 or 4 people, and I think you might have had 40 people. And I don't believe there was ever a meeting with a minister who had so many people. And I want to thank you and your officials for that, because I think it's really a really good piece of work. It's very important for you and your portfolio and your focus, because there comes a time in government when you're in a year and a half, we've got to see results, and I think this is one of the great results. I cannot let this opportunity go without congratulating Senator Mark Daly. He's tenacious, he's determined, he's focused. Some might call him a bit of a sole trader, but that's how he achieves things, because he stays on message and he delivers. And I say all that in a good spirit, because I think they are good qualities in any parliamentarian. I want also to record my thanks and acknowledge, and I think it's important we in this House acknowledge, the great support of his parliamentary assistant, Grace Coyle. And she has been an engine in all of this, and I think that's really important. And it was she that communicated many of the messages. She was down at the meetings with Mark, and I think they've achieved great things. So the bill is important, and hopefully if it's agreed today, it will be on a piece of vellum and it will be up to the Áras an Uachtaráin. And hopefully if it isn't signed, it will be the only second private member's business that will have been introduced and enacted from the houses of from the Seanad in 2017. And I think that's important. And I want to make one other point, that there were 28 bills introduced or presented to the Seanad in 2017. 28 of them. And only one private member's, and I'm talking about private members' business now, was enacted. Only one. And there were 28 introduced in 2017. And I think that's interesting. That's a measure of the work and the commitment and the focus and the drive you've got to apply to bring private members' business. So I want to again say congratulations to all people involved. Hopefully this can be signed and enacted. But finally, I leave one message with you, Minister. It's all very well on paper, but unless we see deliverables, unless we see funding, and unless we see resources and training in place to follow on this, this is all meaningless. So it is important and incumbent on us as senators and other Oireachtas members to keep the pressure on you, on your department and on this government to deliver, because we will have failed if we go out of here all high and excited about a piece of paper. So what we need to do is, yes, it's great work to date, but we, all of us, cross-party, need to commit to delivering on the funding and the resources to make this actually happen. Thank you.
The Minister Harris is waiting. We'll be waiting a long time if every speech is as long as that. Senator Éireann. So
take the hint, okay?
I want everyone to take the hint. Normally we allow the spokespersons to come in, one from each side, but I'm not going to...
I'll be brief. Yeah. On behalf of the Civil Engagement Group, I'll speak. I'll be the only one to speak anyway. So we'd like to obviously thank Mark and the deaf community and congratulate them on all their hard work, including the Minister and his department. I think when Mark asked me to get involved and support this, it definitely raised my awareness and gave me a new appreciation of, you know, something I took for granted, being able to communicate and interact with the world and be heard and be seen. And I think that language it's not only about communicating, it's about our culture and it's our identity. And I hope this is just the first step forward in recognising the deaf community and what they need to go forward, to be able to be, sorry, I'm at the losing my train of thought. To be able to be full, active members of society in every shape and form that we are. Thank you.
Okay, next I'll go to Sinn Féin, Senator Devine.
Just on behalf, really welcome this bill. We've been involved in the debate, and to Mark for being a Trojan warrior and pushing it forward, but most of all to the members of the deaf community here. We're further disability proofing our society and we're going in the right way, but I just want to echo Senator Boyhan's. We need money, Minister, and we will be keeping the pressure on you. But well done, Mark, well done the deaf community. Gura míle mágat.
Thank you for your brevity, Senator Éireann.
Thanks very much, Cahirlock. I suppose sometimes in Irish politics you can get very cynical and you can wonder sometimes when coming in here if anything ever gets achieved, but today honestly there's a little bit of magic in the air, and there's a little bit of magic in the air because of the campaigning zeal of the Irish Deaf Society, who have pursued this issue for quite a long time. And as I said to a group of secondary school students yesterday, that if you believe in something and you believe that it's just and it's right, and you're willing to pursue it, then you'll always win. It helps when you get a decent politician on your side, and that decent politician is Senator Mark Daly. I think he is to be commended by everybody across this House for his zeal in pursuing this issue. And also at a time when the Department of Justice is getting a lot of criticism, and many would feel justifiably so, I would want to recognise the work of Éireann O'Brien in the department. He's somebody I work with myself. He is a committed and extremely professional civil servant, and I think his fingerprints are clearly all over this as well. To say, Cathaoirleach, I think it would be an appropriate thing for Irish school children to be in the position, all Irish school children, to be in a position to learn Irish Sign Language in order to communicate with all of their fellow citizens, and I think surely that would be the next step on the road in this regard. But to congratulate the campaigners, to congratulate Senator Daly, to congratulate Minister, your officials and yourself as well, and just to make that point again, that today I think all of us feel that just a little bit of magic that politics can sometimes bring.
Thank you, Senator Paul Daly.
I'd like to welcome the Minister to the House initially, and I will be brief. Look, I basically just want to compliment and congratulate my colleague, Senator Mark Daly. None of us would be here today if it was not for Mark's tenacity and great work. And as a colleague, friend and somebody who shares the same floor with him, I think maybe better than most how much work went into this, and I'd say I probably only know about the half of it. Mark thanked everybody and mentioned everybody in all the different parties and departments who had an input and a role to play in this. But knowing Mark and knowing his work ethic and knowing how much he and Grace, and I was delighted that he thanked Grace, because so often we can come out as politicians publicly and portray our wares, but it's the people behind us who are actually after doing all the spade work, and I was delighted when Mark gave Grace such recognition. But as I say, knowing Mark and knowing Grace, whenever he went to the meetings to ask questions, he would have brought under his arm a folder which had the answers, and I think that's what helped the thing along so well, and that's how it was so easy to get everybody else on board. And he has put tremendous work into this. Nobody will ever know how much work he has put into it to get it here today, and it is, as the Minister said, it's validation of what we all knew, the significance and the importance of the Seanad, and the people of Ireland did make the right choice in keeping this great institute alive. And I suppose from a personal point of view, thankfully they did, or I would never be here or get the opportunity to say these few words. But I think neither would Mark Daly have got through this bill today that is going to have such a positive effect on so many people and enhance and improve their lives going forward. So, cogordius to Mark.
Thank you. Senator Buttimer.
Bhfuil buchas a gháil agus mar cogordigus a ghlacham leis an Senator Daly's out on Billis atá pasúil. In congratulating Senator Daly, can I, as Leader of the House, join with all the speakers in commending Senator Daly, and I suppose Senator Daly understood full well that when I said as Leader in the House and in meetings with him that we would honour our commitment, and every line of the way we've done that on this side of the House, and at no stage has the government side of this side and the Seanad put an obstruction to Senator Daly in any way, but to commend Grace in his office also, and Ola Murray in the Leader's office. As Senator Éireann rightly said, it's a positive impact and outcome in the lives of so many people, and today is a day where we salute the tenacity of the Irish Deaf Society, the Cork Deaf community, and we won't name names, but all who are involved in the bill know who they are. It is important that we continue, as other speakers have said, to overcome the marginalisation in society. But today is a very good day. It's a day of pride. It's a day of satisfaction. And it's a day where the work of the Oireachtas can be seen in a positive sense. To commend Minister McGrath especially. You can have all the I suppose it's a bit like American football. You can have all the runners and the linebackers. If you haven't got a quarterback, then you've nothing. And Minister McGrath has proven that, to be fair to him, in the department where he wasn't found wanting. He was engaged all of the time. And I know that we have mentioned Éireann O'Brien, but also in the gallery today, Jerry Maguire, who has also been pivotal in this bill coming to a final positive conclusion. But to conclude, Cathaoirleach, just to remind Senator Boyhan that some of the 28 bills that started here would have certainly, in some cases, flawed parts to it which couldn't see them enacted into law. So perhaps in making the comments, some of them, need to come back again. No, I didn't say that. I'm just saying that the 28 bills, some of them weren't ready to be enacted, is what I'm saying.
Senator Norris.
Thank you very much, Ciarán. I'd like to compliment Senator Mark Daly. It's a fine achievement. I'd also like to compliment the Minister, because I think there was a very fruitful dialogue between Senator Daly and the Minister, and also to pay tribute to the Leader of the House, Senator Jerry Bottomer, who facilitated the passage of the bill. So I think those three are the principal people today. As far as I'm concerned, it's an equality issue. I mean, the deaf community were second-class citizens until the passage of this bill. And I think for many of us it was a learning curve. I attended a meeting in the Centre for Deaf Studies in Trinity College, and I was horrified to learn that people had their hands tied behind their backs to prevent them using sign language. And it hadn't actually really struck me at all that Irish Sign Language was the first language for deaf people. I just automatically assumed that it was English and they used sign language as a kind of communication tool, but that English was their first language. And I certainly learned that sign language is the first language and has to be respected. So I compliment Senator Daly, the Minister, and Senator Jerry Bottomer. I think it's a good day's work for the Senate, and I also look forward to members of the deaf community being at last equal citizens with the rest of us in Ireland.
Thank you. Senator Batchik.
And just to add my voice very briefly to all those who've commended Senator Mark Daly, commended members of the Irish Deaf community and the Irish Deaf Society, the Centre for Deaf Studies in Trinity, and all of those who've been so involved in making this legislation happen. As Senator Éireann said, it is a magical day and a magical moment here in the Seanad, and it's great to see a second Seanad private members' bill pass into law, and thanks to the Minister and his officials also for that.
Senator McDowell, thank you.
Sentences. I agree with everything that's been said. And I want to give notice that I'm bringing the Latin language preservation bill as well.
Thank you. Senator Byrne.
Thanks very much. Just briefly, just to thank everybody involved, to congratulate Senator Daly for bringing this forward, to thank the Minister and his officials, especially Jerry, who I know put Trojan work into it. I also want to thank the Deaf Society in Limerick, led by Mary Kiley and Tez Hayes, who put Trojan work into meeting with the local senators and TDs and making their points very well. And I think it's a great day, and to congratulate all involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Harkin.
I'm conscious of the business that we have today, so just very briefly to congratulate Senator Daly. I remember being a councillor when Senator Daly was a candidate the first time, and he showed great tenacity in going around the country and getting himself elected the first time, the second time, the third time, and that tenacity has been shown again in this particular bill going through the House today. I played a very small part as I was chairing at one stage when it was a committee stage in the old Seanad chamber, the original Seanad chamber, and I think we tried to get it through as fast as we could and move it to the next stage. So that was about all I did on it, really, other than to give Mark a bit of moral support, which he probably didn't need too much of. But just to congratulate Mark, again to congratulate Jerry Buttimer, the Minister, and everybody that was involved with this, and particularly the Irish Deaf Society, and wish everybody in the deaf community well with this as it proceeds into law. Thank you.
Senator Paddy Burke.
I'd like to be associated with the sentiments as well today, and I'd like to thank you and your staff in the Seanad as well to make this passage easy for the bill to go through. I'd like to congratulate the Minister as well and the Leader of the House in relation to the bill, and to the Irish Deaf Society and the deaf community. I can remember when I was Cathaoirleach, I can remember well when Senator Daly first brought in the deaf community into the old Seanad chamber, and it was a historic day in a way. So I know only too well the difficulty that Senator Daly had for maybe up to 5 years. It could be 5 years ago. So I'd like to pay compliment as well here today to the former Clerk of the House, Deirdre Lane. I think she played on that occasion and on several other occasions. She played a huge role in relation to this, and I think she should be congratulated as well. But this bill would not be enacted here today were it not for Mark Daly. He has championed this for the last 5 years, and I'd like to congratulate him on this historic day.
Thank you. Senator Humphreys.
Again, I just want to add my voice to congratulating the deaf community and the work they've done, and to Senator Mark Daly. But the one thing that this bill does do is it gives a sense of hope to other marginalised groups, that if we actually champion the cause and we can make a difference, and I congratulate again Mark Daly for making a difference today, to seeing this piece of legislation going through. And there's many other small marginalised groups that also needs to be championed, and maybe in the 2018 this is the opportunity that this House may take up. Groups like people suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, and many other groups that are marginalised on the side, that we all can help, possibly through small changes in legislation. And can I also say to Senator McDowell that I would be supporting his bill, but I hopefully we'll expand it from the private schools into all schools, and all schools get equality opportunity through education.
Senator O'Donnell.
I just want to be associated. I think today is a historic day, and it shows you what the Seanad is capable of doing. I want to commend Mark Daly for bringing it forward. I think this has been a long, hard campaign for the deaf community. I know from meeting them, both will say Des and Mary in Limerick, and many of the deaf community itself, who would have come to me over the last number of years, that this must be an incredible day for both themselves and their family. I want to commend Minister Finian McGrath, his officials Deg Lawn and Jerry Maguire, and I was thinking of Jerry, show me the money, and you found the money, right? To borrow a phrase from the film. And I think that these are days that it makes worthwhile to be involved in politics. It's historic, and it shows that with perseverance, the difference it can make to people's real lives on the ground. So I want just to be associated with this great day.
Finally, the youngest senator in the House, Senator Warfield.
For your time, just to follow on from Senator Humphreys, I think this is an example of, the best example of what happens when we're educated around the lived experience of citizens and communities, and having all of us having learned about the importance of Irish Sign Language. I think we're all astonished about the extent to which the deaf community has been disadvantaged by the lack of recognition, particularly with regard to rights before the law and right to access to justice. So it's a privilege to be associated with the compliments, and congratulations to everyone in the gallery and to the community at large.
Thank you. And I thought we were finding Senator David has indicated he wants to say a few brief words.
Just very briefly, again I'd like to commend Senator Mark Daly here and Grace and his team and everybody here in the gallery, as we have seen, have been so excited for the last number of days. So congratulations again, Seanad.
And finally, the Minister wishes to say a few words.
I just want to say a final thank you to all of the senators for your great support here this morning for the Irish Sign Language Bill, because it's a very, very worthwhile, and it will make a huge impact on the lives of members of the deaf community. So I want to commend you all. I want to particularly commend Mark, and I want to share his thoughts in relation to Daniel and William McCarthy. I think it is appropriate that we dedicate this legislation to him. Because the bottom line here is the key thing is, as well as the issues talking about services, but a key important part of this debate was social isolation. And Section 7 there, issues are raised during Section 7. So I just want to give you a commitment there that I'll be closely watching any pilot projects and the €50,000 that's been spent in that area as well, because that is a very important aspect of the legislation. But on the three basic things in the bill, the recognition by the state of ISL, the duty on public bodies to provide the ISL service at no cost, and the statutory right to use ISL in the courts. Of course, a number of senators have raised the issue. Senator Mordevine and Senator Victor there raised the issue about resources. Part of my National Disability Inclusion Strategy over the next 4 years emphasised that. €1.763 billion will be spent in 2018 in disability services, and this is up from €1.688 billion in 2017. So the additional $10 million, for example, for 1,500 school leavers, there's $10 million extra this week you saw for respite services. So we are building, and today we have the Irish Sign Language Bill. So there is a plan, there is a strategy. We're banking certain things, but we're also building. And of course we're also conscious of making sure that they're delivered. I want to thank the Leader of the House as well, Senator Jerry Buttimer, for facilitating this debate. And absolutely there was no obstruction whatsoever. But the key thing as well, as Senator David Norris mentioned, is this is about the equality issue. And I think your House And the fact when Dave was talking there, I was thinking of going back 25, 30 years ago. ISL was banned. Sign language. There was corporal punishment for children that were caught using Irish Sign Language in some of the institutions. Deaf kids were sent to institutions for services. The services weren't being brought to the young children. So we have come a long way, and it is about the equality issue. And the final thing I'll say that from your point of view, because as I mentioned earlier on, you are the engine room as far as I'm concerned in relation to this particular bill, but also in relation to the equality issue and the debate as well. So finally, Carol, I want to wish you all a happy Christmas. I want to thank Mark Daly again and all of the people, all of the officials directly involved in it, and thank you for your great support and the best of luck in 2018.
And can I ask say my word of congratulations to Senator Mark Daly for his tenacity in seeing this through and for all the cooperation of the senators in the House. I think it's a good day for the Seanad, and to also say to the deaf community it's a very good day for you, probably not before time, but this is how sometimes the axis of the Seanad and the Dáil can grind very slowly. So it is a great day for you, Mark Daly, and for what you have achieved, and wish you all in the deaf community a happy and more hopeful Christmas as a result of this bill being passed. Thank you. We're now going on to item number 3. Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Yeah. All done and dusted. Yeah. Thank you as well and your staff, and a happy Christmas to you as well.